Hello everyone, welcome back to the People Around Me podcast. I am your host, Tiana. Today we're going to be talking about polyamory, but not in the way you think. We're going to be talking about it in terms of relationships with friends and just how capitalism has, commodified love and romance. And what inspired this episode was a couple of different readings that I will read with you and give you my commentary on. Today's episode is being recorded. I always record the podcast on my phone and voice notes, but right now I have it resting on my knee. So I just think that's funny because I don't want you to hear my laptop fan. So hopefully you don't hear that. But yes, so today, before we get into our main topic, I'm going to give you a hot take today. And my hot take is that I personally feel like if we're not in the same tax bracket, I really don't care about your views on race specifically, because at the end of the day, like, your rich opinions are literally not really affecting my everyday life in some sense. Like, I just really don't care what rich people have to say about race and their epiphanies and how they want to be allies. It's just really none of my business sometimes. I'm like, yes, you go through whatever you want in your little rich world. Do not come bother me about it, because I don't want to listen and be here waiting at your beg and call. So that's how I feel sometimes, especially today. There's a bunch of celebrities and just famous rich people that could fall in that category. Okay, so we're going to dive right into this. So what inspired this topic was an article by Dean Spade called For Lovers and Fighters that one of my professors put in our required readings last year. And immediately I loved this essay. It's 3 pages if you print it front and back, so then it's 6 pages. But the way it's printed is like really small. And I don't know where my professor got this from, but so before I read you the essay, some of the essay, not all of it, before I read you some of the essay, I'm going to let you know about the author. The author is a trans man, and I think they go by he pronouns, but when I'm not sure, I just say they, but I'm going to say he. So Dean Spade is an associate professor at Seattle University School of Law, where he teaches administrative law, poverty law, gender and law, policing and imprisonment, and law and social movements. Prior to joining the faculty of Seattle University, Dean was a Williams Institute Law Teaching Fellow at UCLA Law School and Harvard Law School. In 2002, Dean founded the Sylvia Rivera Law Project, a nonprofit law collective that provides free legal services to transgender, intersex, and gender nonconforming people who are low income or people of color. SRLP also engages in litigation, policy reform, and public education on issues affecting these communities, and operates on collective governance model, which is prioritizing the governance and leadership of trans, intersex, and gender nonconforming people of color. So it's safe to say Dean Spade is very smart and has a bunch of accolades and has contributed a lot to society. So I didn't know a lot of this before I fell in love with the essay. But the essay has put me on a journey and really made me be introspective about my life and just how I interact with others in a intimate way. And intimate does not always have to be like sexual or inappropriate. It could be just literally proximity to people and how much people you want around you. When I use the word intimate, I usually use it because I like to be in very small groups, one-on-one type thing. And to me, that's intimate. Like, if I could smell your breath, like, that's intimate. And I would just like you to make sure you're using gum. Okay. So I'm going to read some paragraphs and I'm going to let you know. So, For Lovers and Fighters by Dean Spade. In the past 5 years or so, increasing numbers of people I know have started talking about practicing polyamory. Queer and trans people in the communities I participate in have been spending more time discussing these ideas together and generating analysis about them. Many people still recite the common advice that work, but as many of us live consistently with identities and practices that we've been told our whole lives cannot work, I see people consistently resisting the common sense of monogamy, just as we resist the common sense we inherit our race, class, gender, and sexuality in our culture. So in this first paragraph, basically Dean Spade is letting us know where this essay comes from and how we are always being told how certain things can't work. You're like, oh no, you can't do that. That won't work. That won't work. But then when you look at it, there are people who are living their whole lives based on how they have been told that that can't work. People have been told, oh no, you can't date a man. Oh no, you can't date same sex. Or no, you can't be transgender or whatever. And people are doing that. And I don't want to say they're just fine, because a lot of society reprimands people, but people are still doing it. And one thing I want to be clear about that I wasn't clear about yet, if you made it this far and haven't clicked off because you think, oh, because you're not a part of the LGBT community, you can't relate to this. I am a straight woman. I am a cisgender, heteronormative or heterosexual woman. I definitely think the more I read these things, it definitely challenges me to think about what a queer identity is and how would that look for me. But as of right now, I have only dated men and only plan to be with men. But at the same time, you're going to see that this podcast episode is not necessarily about dating and who you choose to date, but it's just more about introspective work on how you choose to connect with human beings in general. So let's continue. In the third paragraph, Spade goes on to say, "It was a relief to me to find out that in my teens, there were many feminists waging a critique of romance. I saw how the myth of hetero-monogamous romance lined up to mess with women, to create a cultural incentive to enter the property arrangements of marriage, to place women in a subordinate position in the romantic dyad, to define women's worth solely in terms of success at finding and keeping a romance, to brainwash women into spending all their time measuring themselves against this norm and working to change their bodies, behaviors, and activities to meet the requirements of being attractive to men and suitable for romance. I see this myth as both personally damaging to people in how it creates unrealistic expectations about ourselves and each other and causes us to constantly experience insecurity, and also politically damaging because it's a giant distraction from our resistance and it divides us, especially based on the effed up ways fulfilling stereotypes about how women compete with each other. Sadly, although the usual tropes are focused around heterosexual romance, much of this gets carried into queer communities as well and surrounds our approaches to sex, love, and romance to varying degrees. It's important to have a critique of the myth of romance that looks at how damaging it is to us in our personal lives and how it is designed to fuel social arrangements that were codified in law, that were invented to subordinate women and make them the property of men. So this paragraph does a lot that I want to talk about. One thing I want to talk about that was mentioned is how it is politically damaging. Now, I personally wish that in politics we didn't separate personal lives to an extent, because I think the way people run their personal lives dictates a lot of like the political things they do in the government. So being that some women have to take on more responsibility when it comes to raising kids, and how that could be a burden in trying to do certain political type of jobs period, but politically, like activist movements, like nonprofit work. Once you are a woman supporting a family, you are just doing already more to make sure you're doing your day-to-day job. And that also influences your attitude towards work in general. And I also think when you're going to work as a woman, if you are single or in a relationship or out of a relationship, whatever, sometimes these are dating pools as well. People are looking to you to see if they like you. They want to hang out with you. If you look nice, there's that pressure to get ready in the morning. So there's just so many things that play into the work people do. and how that intertwines with other things. Like even in the government, like when you hear about senators and other people, when you hear about just political figures in general, whether they've cheated on their spouse, whether they have had a mistress, all of that factors into the hypocrisy that we see when people are making laws and telling other people what not to do, but behind closed doors they're doing it and they get away with it because it's behind closed doors and it's supposed to be nobody's business. When no, that should be people's business, because you continue to restrain yourself, or what's the word? It's resist or refine your temptations and what you naturally want because of society's mold. So for example, there are so many people who resist urges that they feel like they shouldn't have. Like for example, if a man is cheating on his wife with maybe multiple women, or had a mistress for years, you are doing that because you're doing that in the shadows, because you can't do that out in the open, because you are part of the problem that says that that monogamy is the only way and the only thing that should be done. But clearly you don't agree with that because of your actions, but you're going to preach that in person until people find out your personal business. So I feel like if we didn't make certain structures that made monogamy the only thing, we wouldn't have certain people going behind people's backs and having all these situations happening and cheating and whatnot, because that factors into the political work. Because I feel like when you are resisting so much, you just become an evil, nasty person. And that is how I view a lot of people who are in leadership. When they have really nasty and rude personalities, I immediately think like, wow, whatever's going on in your personal life, you're resisting urges, you're just depressed because you're not able to get out, you're not able to live your authentic lives. And I don't know, I hope that makes sense. A part of like, because I just personally feel like, and that's why I gravitate towards zodiac signs, because it's a way for people to figure out who they are and what makes them them, so that they're able to understand themselves, to do their work or contribute to society better. And I feel like if we keep having all these structures in place, you can't be gay, you can't be trans, you can't date multiple people, you can't be gender non-conforming, you can't do this, you can't do that. All of these can'ts just make people really toxic and do toxic things. Where people can be themselves and create a world around authentically being themselves without boundary and judgment. And that even includes being sexually liberated to an extent. And the only reason why I say to an extent, because I don't think sexual liberation is what everyone needs to be their truest self. But we get a better world out of it. So yeah, that's just my take on what was being said in that paragraph. And also the romance piece. I think romance is just so commodified. And there's some other essays I want to read about that on here, because yeah, I'm just like we've created romance out of just this heterosexual norm, and it could look so different. And sadly, people in the LGBT community have to deal with those irrational traditions, and it seeps into their culture, and they can't always they don't always have the way to start from scratch to figure out their own ways of romance that isn't our weird heterosexual way. So then he goes on to say, I also think about this in terms of capitalism, in the sense that capitalism is always pushing us towards perfection, creating ideas of the right way to be a man or a woman or a mother or a date or whatever that person just cannot fulfill. The goal is that we will consistently strive and buy things until we fill that gap of insecurity that is created. You can never be too rich or too thin, or rich enough or thin enough. Capitalism is fundamentally invested in notions of scarcity, engaging people to feel that we never have enough, so that we will act out of greed and hoarding and focus on accumulation. Indeed, the romance myth is focused on scarcity. There is only one person out there for you. You need to find someone to marry before you get too old. The sexual exclusivity rule is focused on scarcity. Each person only has a certain amount of attention or attraction or love or interest, and if any of it goes to someone else besides their partner is losing out. We don't generally apply this rule to other relationships. We don't assume that having 2 kids means loving the first one less or not at all. Or having more than one friend means that you're being bad or fake to all your other friends. We apply this particular understanding of scarcity to romance and love, and most of us internalize that feeling of scarcity pretty deeply. Whew. Okay, so this paragraph is what really drew me into this essay, because it's basically talking about how we have so many irrational thoughts towards loving one person when we don't see that in loving a child. A parent can have 6 kids, and you might ask the parent, like, oh, who's your favorite kid? But you're not dead serious. You're just trying to see what they're going to say. And the parent is going to say, I love my children equally. So why doesn't that apply to relationships? Why can't you have 3 boyfriends and girlfriends and say, I love them all equally? It's one of those things where it's like in love, we've applied that capitalistic lens to think, oh no, I can only love that one person, and jealousy and whatnot comes when that person is not only loving you. That's why I think that the Red Table Talk on cheating was so good, because it gave you another perspective on how that does not have to necessarily be the end all be all to relationships. But again, you would have to watch that episode to flesh that out more, because me just saying that sounds weird, because, I'm not a fan of cheating. But at the same time, when you really listen to that episode, you like, okay, like I can see this in another world. But again, girl, if a girl is listening to this and your boyfriend just cheated on you, don't take him back, because you're not applying what I just told you, and you're not applying that episode. So try it again in another relationship, not the one you just left. Okay. So yeah, but again, this notion of scarcity, it is just so interesting to me that it could be applied to love and romance. Like, we're constantly looking for a way to be better and better and better, or richer and richer, or whatever it is. And that allows you to purchase more too, to get there. And that if you just keep purchasing and purchasing, you'll always be fine, because you're the one who is getting access to the resources, and that you are theoretically taking away from someone else. We could have a conversation on whether like life in general is like not a 0-sum game, but at the same time, because when you really think about it, like scarcity does exist, but it's literally doesn't have to be the end all be all. Like, oh, if we don't get this and we don't get that, like we'll die. No, if we just learn globally to share and consume fairly, with other people in mind, I don't think scarcity would be that big of a deal, because right now we're killing off things that we need anyway. So it's just like, how much do we really care about scarcity if there are certain things that rich people and corporations get to decide that's disposable, but the rest of the people in the world don't? But anyway, so basically this episode is one of my rants, I guess, that I've talked about that I'll be doing. But okay, let's see, what other paragraph are we going to read? Okay, and then he says, this gets to another central point for me. One of the things I see myself doing and thinking about this stuff is examining how lots of people I know are really awesome, but then show their worst side, their worst behavior to the person they date. To that person, they will be overtly needy or dependent, dominating or possessive, jealous or mean, or disrespectful or thoughtless. I have seen that tendency in myself as well. It makes sense. So much insecurity surrounds the romance myth and the world of shame in which sexuality is couched in our culture. We can become our mysterious, monstrous selves in those relationships. I also see people prioritizing romantic relationships over all else, ditching their friends, putting all their emotional eggs in one basket, and creating unhealthy dynamics with people they date because of it. It becomes simultaneously the most important relationship and the one where people act out their most insecure selves. Say that again. I feel like people want to be in a relationship, of course, not for the happy moments, but also to show their worst. They want to be jealous and mean and crazy to their partner because, they can't do that with their friends. So they wait until they're in a relationship to do that. And it's like, no, you shouldn't put all of that on one person when everyone should have a decent place in your life. Yes, you could have friends you do some things with and you do other things with, but that doesn't mean like you're literally putting all of your human being eggs, I guess, in one human being personality traits in one basket to one person that you're waiting for in your life. Like, people have made us feel like that is romantic and beautiful. Like, people are like, just wait till you get married, you tell that person everything, they're the only one who's gonna know you like this and like that. And like, it seems kind of cute, but when you really think about it, that seems crazy. It just seems crazy how you're just gonna have this one person where you treat them like they're the best, and you treat them like they're the worst because you know you're gonna make up or things will be better later or whatever. And it's like, you ditch your friends and then you isolate yourself. Some people, not all, but there should be a healthy balance. Like, I really love and respect my friends that could be in relationships, but also not forget about their friends. Because you need both. You just need both. You need a collective. When people say it takes a village to raise a child, once that child is done being raised, the village shouldn't disappear. Now you should make your own village and have other people around you that are constantly nurturing you. And you should be in other people's villages, nurturing them as well. So there's like this singular thing. There's one thing. I feel like it's only really in the United States that we're like, this one. You always need the best friend. You need the best boyfriend. You need the best job. You need the best car. You need the best house. Like, there can only be one. People always make you seem like it's one. It needs the best phone. Like, it's always how it could only be one. And that's just not the case. It's just not the case. Okay, this is the next paragraph that I just love. Okay, so Spade says, one of my goals in thinking about redefining the way we view relationships is to try to treat the people I date more like I treat my friends. Try to be respectful and thoughtful and have boundaries and reasonable expectations, and try to treat my friends more like my dates, to give them special attention, honor my commitments to them, be consistent, and invest deeply in our futures together. Okay, there's like some spelling errors in here because this is like a unofficial essay that Spade wrote. So let me try it again. In the queer communities I'm in, valuing friendship is a really big deal. Often coming out of the fact that lots of us don't have family support, and build deep supportive structures with other queers. We are interested in resisting the heteronormative family structure in which people are expected to form a dyad, marry, have kids, and get all their needs met within that family structure. A lot of us see that is unhealthy. As new technology of post-industrial late capitalism, that is connected to alienating people from community and training them to think in terms of individuality, to value the smaller unit of the nuclear family rather than the extended family, thus questioning how the status of accompanying behavior norms are different in how we treat our friends versus our dates, and trying to bring those into balance. Start to support our work of creating chosen families and resisting the alienation of community that capitalism seeks. So, oh my God, like, that is so important, because when you really think about individuality, like, especially when it comes to the family and money, a lot of people back in the day, and I would say, like, I don't know, back in the day or in other countries, people live with their families. No matter how annoying your grandma, uncle is, people will live put together and get a big enough house to where, some people have space, and sometimes if you can't afford it, you're in a smaller house, but you live with your family, and that helps you cultivate money and wealth to survive. We have this idea that when you get a lot of money, you need to get that apartment by yourself. And then if you're in a relationship, get that apartment with your significant other. But there's so many ways where, like, we are putting ourselves in financial risky situations by those goals. I need to move out by myself. I need to do this on my own. I need to be an individual. I need to seek my own goals. When it's okay to do that within a group. There were reasons why people did that before, right now, and in other countries. And in other communities that have different identities. Like, they're saying, like, queer communities, they had to do this because their family was not supporting them. So they couldn't have that nuclear family unit because their family was like, get out of my house. So that forces you to do other things, and you realize that those other things that you have to do to survive can be better than the situation you were in before. So basically this essay goes into why he doesn't think he can do polyamory, but it's an interesting concept because it allows you to basically love other people and find different needs in other people, which I think is very interesting. Like, after reading this, I know for me personally, there are certain things that I just don't want to do with someone, and that is the reason why I'm not in a relationship, and I don't see myself being in a relationship, because I'm like, I don't like the things that come with being in a relationship that you feel like you have to do. And if that person doesn't want to do it with you, then of course you need to find somebody else. But why can't you find somebody else and still love me and want to be with me to do those things that I don't want to do with you? And it's like, people are like, yeah, if you get in a relationship, you guys have to be like sexually compatible. That's a big part of the relationship. You guys got to connect there. And I'm just like, you know what? No matter how many people keep talking about that, I don't believe it. I don't think that, because at the same time, in the LGBTQIAA list of letters, there is asexuality, and there are a group of people who are continuously not being spoken for and aromantic, who just like don't find the need for sexual sexual connection. Oh my gosh. Interaction, I think, is the word I'm looking for. Sexual interaction and romantic interaction. So when people are like, no, everyone in a relationship has to find this one person who does this for them, it's just like, I hate when activists like people say that, because I'm like, there's a group of people you're not being inclusive of. And it's crazy because you worked so hard to be an inclusive activist, but you're still leaving out this group of people. And there's so many sexual liberation people, whether they're, got an afro, Black Panther fist, whether they black, white, brown, they all, when they do talk about sex and relationships, they're like, yeah, because women need to be sexually liberated. We've been repressed for so long. We need to, be able to feel free and just have casual sex and all that. And they just lose me with that, because I'm like, why is that I get why that's a talking point to some extent for some women, but you're going to have some women out here that are trying to have casual sex and they're going to feel depressed and invaded because that's not what they wanted to do, but they did it because you kept selling them on an outcome that they'll feel more liberated, and they don't. So I just feel like people need to put those two in contrast. So yeah, it almost is, I don't know if this is a tangent, but it also goes to the argument where people are like, oh, like, there, for example, no, it goes to this. There are people who are pro-choice, but for themselves, they choose that if they got pregnant, they wouldn't get an abortion. They'll, by an accident or whatever, they wouldn't have an abortion, but they believe that other women deserve the right to choose. And that's my whole thing. At the end of the day, like, yes, you can be sexually liberated and you could feel like, yes, this is one of the ways for me that I feel, more liberated. But for others, it's not. So you need to say that too, because you're going to have women thinking that out here after a while of having casual sex, and then you finally settle down and have a monogamous partner, that they will just feel like they've conquered the world and like succeeded in their 20s. Like, that's just not the case for everyone. But anyway, I'll be the voice for that minority. So yeah, next I just want to read a article that I found that is called Love in the Time of Capitalism. And this essay was really good, and I found it just doing my research on what else I'm going to read for this episode. And this was really easy to find. Like, I literally typed in like love and capitalism and like the commodification of romance, and I found some really good stuff. So basically, Google whatever thoughts you have in your mind, and you will be shocked by what Google can give you. And then if it's one of those scholarly articles where it's like you got to pay for it, ask any of your friends in college to find the article for you and send it to you, and you don't have to pay for it. So, okay, I don't know how much of this I'm going to read, but maybe I'll crop some stuff out. So this was found on the Left Voice, and the title is Love in the Time of Capitalism. This was posted 2 years ago on Valentine's Day by Tatiana Kozarely. I'm really bad with sounding out names if the person doesn't say it first. Okay. So it says, this Sunday, many will enjoy a day with their spouses and partners filled with Hallmark cards, roses, and sentimental dates. For some, Valentine's Day is a day to express deep love and desire. For others, it's a performance of affection in a charade of a partnership that no longer is emotionally or sexually fulfilling. Anyone who spends Valentine's Day single knows the social pressure to be in a romantic relationship. You can hardly go anywhere without seeing chocolate hearts, flowers, and gushy cards that proclaim undying love. In the first couple of years into a relationship, celebrating Valentine's Day can be cute, even if you know that it's a farce of a holiday meant to make massive profits for capitalists. Others find that V-Day means putting on a performance of affection in partnerships that are no longer emotionally or sexually fulfilling. Finally, for some, the day is terribly depressing, lonely, and isolating, convincing them they are unlovable and have been left behind by friends who all seem to have found the one. There is already, on any other day of the year, immense social, cultural, and economic pressure to be partnered, and this pressure is only amplified on the 14th of February. So then I'm going to skip one paragraph, and it says, whether single or in an unhappy relationship, many feel like it's our fault if we are lonely or unfulfilled. But if 70s feminists taught us anything, it's that the personal is political. There is something systematic going on. The truth is that whether one is single or in a relationship, capitalism leaves a foul imprint on romantic possibilities. Love in the time of capitalism carries serious social and economic constraints. Today, love is not pure or free, but shackled by a system of misery, oppression, and exploitation. Yes, I love the drama. I love it. Okay. The next chunk is called Class Aims of Love. The connection between love, marriage, and sex is not an immutable part of society. Love has a history and has not always been understood in the same way. The ruling class has always used love to further its own aims, and capitalism is no different. Although we can feel many different kinds of love from many different people, romantic love expressed via marriage is privileged by social institutions. The Bolshevik Revolution, Alexandria Kollontai took up this issue a century ago, arguing bourgeoisie society was built on the principles of individualism and competition and has no place for friendship or for friendship as a moral factor. Friendship does not help in any way and may hinder the achievement of class aims. And what are these class aims? They are competition above solidarity, family above community, and nationalism above internationalism. They are the extraction of unpaid labor in the form of childcare, cleaning, and cooking, all typically provided by women who are expected to demonstrate their love by working for free. For working class women, this unpaid labor is a second shift, one that starts at home after they leave their jobs. For the wealthy, much of this unpaid labor is done by underpaid Black and immigrant women. Love is an ideological tool that serves to divide us and pit us against each other. Most parents work hard to give their children a better life, not for personal fulfillment and not for the betterment of society. It's no wonder love and marriage and two-person romantic couplings are so important to capitalism. Love and marriage is as much an economic arrangement as a romantic one. It's about sharing bank statements, taxes, mortgages, and loans, as much as it is about shared affection, care, and companionship. For the capitalist class, it's about passing down property. For the working class, it's the safety net that the government refuses to provide. This is evident when both Republican and Democrats blame poverty on the lack of strong family units, all but arguing for people to stay together for economic functions of family, not love or companionship. There is mass marketing strategy meant to lead us to believe that any monogamous relationship, even a dysfunctional one, is the only avenue to happiness and security. So this is, after reading this, it's one of those things that just make me want to scream to the top of my lungs and tell the people, how long does this have to keep failing for us to get a wake-up call? We keep seeing every once in a while just a relationship that works. We'll see one, and that will be the poster child for everyone. Whether it's in our families, whether it's a celebrity couple, we'll see that one relationship that actually works and think, okay, it could probably work for us. And instead of just seeing that one that works and the rest around us that's failing, instead of being like, oh, well, maybe this is just a fluke and this actually shouldn't be what we're aiming for. No, we say this is the goal and we need to have more discipline to get there and inspire to there. And that's where I'm looking at, and I'm like, this is all a joke, and I quit, and I'm not going to be dealing with it. When so many people are like just trying to find the one or the person for them, I'm like, this is all a joke. Like, you're telling me I'm supposed to have kids and a husband and do what? Take care of them for the rest of my life? What if that's not what I want to do? And then it's like, you have some men who, whether they're with a strong woman or not, they're thinking, okay, how can I take care of this woman? How can I make sure that this woman could stay home and take care of my kids? And it's just like, that shouldn't even be on your radar if that's not what you want to do either. And I feel like a lot of people beat themselves up when they don't fit into these molds, when these molds were just created for a structured society, of what they think a structured society will look like. And now we're forcing ourselves to fit into them when we can't. And it's one of those things that I hate, that when, especially like as people of color or in different queer communities, when people are trying to fit into these like capitalistic white supremacist molds, and then because we grew up with them and now we're like, I don't want to say addicted, but now we've romanticized them, I guess, for lack of a better word, or we glamorize them, or we hold them near and dear to our hearts because that's what we've been seeing from the beginning. So we want to experience that. It's like, now we can't imagine doing anything different. Like, for example, like I had this one woman, she told me how like all of her sons, I think, are gay. And one of the things she was thinking to herself was like, wow, like one of my sons, they will never bring home like a daughter, like a girl. And, you know, they will never be head of the football team and bring home the head cheerleader. Like, people are literally dreaming and wishing for movie script type lives and pushing that on their children. People are mad. Some people can be mad when their children are gay because they won't fit into that movie they saw a couple of years ago. And that's not how we should base our real lives and real life people on. And that's why like the media, but like movies and TV shows don't get enough credit for how they destroy our realities. Yes, it's like marketing. Yeah, it's like propaganda and tradition and religion that gets thrown at why we are the way we are. But no, it's literally movie and TV scripts and these fictional things that are basing how we discriminate and oppress other people because they can't live out our fantasies and realities. And I just think that is sick. And I work every single day not to let those things just get me down. Like, there are some days where I do want that movie, I do want that TV show, I do want that, but then I realize, no, I have to create a life of my own. And it's going to be so hard when there are so many other people trying to perform and live out something that's not actually what they want. And some people might not even know what they want because they never really get to see or understand where their motivations are coming from. So that's annoying. But at the same time, I'm like, if we are not having these discussions in school, like school is such a foundational part of everyone's life. Like, you go to school from for 7 to 8 hours a day, 5 days a week, from when you turn like 5 or 6 up until you're like 17, 18. And through all that time, you can be having discussions like this while learning how to get X to the other side. Like, you can be learning all of these things in school, but we can't fathom that because that's just not how it's been getting done for a long time. And I hate that excuse. Like, there are so many times when people are like, oh, well, you know, things have been going like this for a while, so it can't change. It can. Like, all you have to do is change it. Like, it's really fine. Like, just change it. And when it changes for the better now, then we will have a better precedent. And that's why I feel like it is so bad when it's almost like a cultural repercussion or a cultural collateral when you start something, and all because you started it at that point in time the wrong way, it then affects people's lives forever. Like, I don't know how to describe what I'm saying, but it's a theory. And that's why I need to write a book someday, and I need to start creating my own words for my thoughts, because It's like, for example, when you think of like segregation, like the day segregation started and was put into law, it has now affected our lives up until now. And it's now become a cultural way that some of us have decided to live. Like, to me, my blackness was created by living in a segregated community. Like, it was only Black and Latinx people in my community. And that's because of, it's like a cultural collateral. Now, when you're telling me to integrate, and now when you're telling me that there are other types of blackness all over the country or whatever, it's like I can't fathom it because I hold my culture so deep and so deep to myself. But the only reason why I hold it that deep to me is because it was created out of something that was oppressive. And now look, you have to, it's a valid experience. What I'm saying is a valid experience. So you can't just throw it out the window. You can't throw it out the window when people want to get married and stuff. You can't throw it out the window when people want to have kids, because that was something that was put in place and now it's ingrained into people's cultures and that's what they value. So that's what I feel like needs to be talked about. When people are like, okay, we're going to put this law in place or we're going to do this now, you have to think about, okay, if this is the culture that's going to come out of what we create, we cannot invalidate it in the future, or we have to make sure we are able to work it out in the future. Like, I hope that's making sense. But that's what I really got out of these two essays, is that just like love and romance is something that is not as personal and non-political as people may think. People may think, oh my gosh, everything's political. Everything is political correctness. Not everything is political. Not everything has to do with the government, or not everything has to do just with, I don't know. Not everything is personal. People think, oh, this is my personal business. How I do things personal shouldn't be political, but it is. Whether it's who you date, whether who you have friends with, it's not like, I guess it goes into free will. It's not just what you freely think and choose. It has come from somewhere, whether you like to admit it or not. Just like when people are like, oh, it's not all about race. Oh, it's not all about gender. It is. It is. So it's like, if you can have a conversation, if you are having a conversation with your girlfriends, your boyfriends or whatever, and you like, yeah, and you're just talking about dating or whatever parts of your life, if you can't also talk about those things in terms of history and colonization, beauty standards, if you are not also talking about all those things at the same time, then you're not really having a real conversation on what your dating life like or your friendships are, because all of those things make them what they are. So it's almost like we keep robbing ourselves and other people of having really superficial conversations when they can get deeper. It's like, yeah, I don't know. It's just like, I really just enjoyed these two essays because it really made me think like, wow, all of these things I knew were deeper than what they were. And it just challenges me every day to not be like, oh yeah, I'm going to date this guy. And like, yeah, I'm not going to talk about certain things with him because, if he's experimented with guys, like, I would never date him or talk to him because that's disgusting. It's like, there's just certain things I can't do or be anymore, or certain things I can't be around. It's just like, I really like when people are able to be very fluid in who they are and what they think, because that's another level of knowledge and confidence. And I think that is the only thing that I'll be looking for in a partner, is someone who is not disgusted because someone they love or like has experimented with the different sex or same sex. They're not disgusted when someone has really questioned how they are as a person, how they want to express themselves. Whether, okay, you can be a guy with muscles, but you may have decided for 2 years of your life you wanted to experiment with nail polish and lashes. Like, that shouldn't be so disgusting and taboo and weird when we are all human beings and we all get to decide how we want to perform and play out our lives. But you shouldn't be like grossed out or disgusted by how other people want to, do certain things. And you have to challenge yourself. Why do I like this person? Why don't I like this person? And is there other ways I can work on myself to be open to loving and appreciating more people? And I think that once you start learning all these things, you just want to be around people who understand that and talk about that. Like, one of the things I hate so much is when people are like, oh, like, I started dating this guy, but I don't want to show you a picture of him because, like, he doesn't take pictures well. Girl, if you love him and you like him, it shouldn't matter what I care about how he looks. It shouldn't matter. It shouldn't matter. It shouldn't matter if, you really think that guy is cute, but when he started talking, he sounded a little feminine. It shouldn't matter. It shouldn't matter. So I think, especially for other men, like, if I know I find a man that's attractive, that's like tall, dark, and whatever, has like a hairline. If I find that attractive, I know that a lot of men that look like that might not have the most open beliefs about what I'm saying right now. So guess what? Either I don't date the people that I deemed attractive to myself, and I date other people, or I just don't date at all. Because at the end of the day, there's so many other things that I can do to fulfill myself instead of just trying to fit a mold in order to get a partner. I can't. It's like, once people could finally admit to themselves or say out loud or just realize in general that a lot of the things they believe and hold near and dear to their heart has been created to keep them under control. And once they let that go and create their life for themselves, they would be much better people and in less depressive and anxious states, because you keep trying to live up to something that you never really thought of for yourself. It's not something which you genuinely want to do. It's been created and contrived politically, and you need to let it go. Okay, I think I'm going to start wrapping up this podcast, and I really like the idea that I could always make a part 2. I could always do something to add on to my thoughts, or else I would get so anxious in ending these podcasts because I would feel like they're never complete and they need to be perfect. But again, perfect is being done, or no, being done is better than being perfect. There we go. So yeah, in order to end this podcast, I'm going to end it with a little bit of zodiac conversation. So I've been listening to this one podcast called Astro Hive, and it really made me look into my chart and learn more about my birth chart. So if you haven't done your birth chart, please do. I am a Gemini sun, as I mentioned, but that's the only place I have Gemini in my chart. Everything else is pretty much Virgo. There's a lot of Virgo in my chart, including my North Node. And I wanted to bring that up because I think it would be really useful for you all to look up your North Node, because I think the purpose of it is to show you or tell you like why you're in this world and where you're going in life. And when I tell you, when I looked up my North Node, I never felt more clear in my path. I should just tell you what my Virgo North Node is. But like, when you look at my chart, like, I'm basically like a Virgo. I'm just reading this off of any site I just Googled. Let's see. Virgo is probably the least understood and most underestimated sign of the zodiac. Whether it's your sun sign or your North Node sign, you have a unique ability to visualize the ideal and the willingness to do what must be done to bring the ideal into reality. What a gift. However, for you to do the high path of Virgo, you must use the tools of discrimination and discernment, which also means you need to dot your I's and cross your T's by carefully attending to the little details of life, and by analyzing what's really happening, you'll be able to make your dreams come true. That seems pretty clear to me. I mean, I'm very picky about what I engage in and who I talk to all the time, because I know that I need to remain clear and unbothered in order to fulfill my dreams and my goals. And I don't know, I think that, okay, yeah, I can go on and on about my signs and stuff, but I definitely want you all to look up your own. And I don't know, let me know what yours are and if you feel like it's working for you. Okay, if you are one of those people who really don't like zodiac signs in your birth chart, just really doesn't explain you, let me know. I'm really interested in that, because I feel like everyone should be like really getting who they are from these things. But yeah, so I'm going to wrap up the podcast with that. Thank you so much for tuning in. Let me know, what lengths do you like? Do you like 20 minutes, 40 minutes? Do you like 60 minutes? Do you like how everything is going so far. Let me know. Everything is in the show notes that you need to know and can guide you to the best places on the internet. So yeah, thanks for listening.